Oh, hey, look, it's those people I know. Internet. Okay, yeah, so recently, last time I uploaded the video of Danny's log talking about, the Fallout episode, Fallout TV series I had. In that amount of time, Amazon came out and they said they're making a Fallout TV series from the same people who made Westworld. How nice is that? So I quite literally, I predicted it in a way. No, but I am pissed though. Like, I was the one who's gonna do that. Like, I was the one who's gonna make that show. Okay, I'm using my computer to film this, not my phone like last time. So I'm gonna look like in my eyes when I'm recording, and that's gonna mess up everything. It's gonna mess up everything, guys. Like I just look here, just look at you, but I'm not. I'm looking at myself. Anyway, so yeah, I wanted to make the show, but apparently a 16-year-old fucking living in his basement is not good enough for Bethesda. Apparently. Anyway, but I kind of abruptly left off at the end of season one for our Fallout TV series. So I'm just gonna keep on going through for each season. Now I'm up here, in Wisconsin right now. I'm down by in the basement. It's like I didn't realize it was that late. It's currently 1 in the morning, and I'm recording this anyway. But yeah, let's just talk about season two of Fallout. If you didn't watch the first video, which everyone didn't, you would realize that at the end of season one of Fallout, Hick and Cherry, they entered into a insane asylum like hospital slash ward or some sort, and they get cornered by this guy who experimented on these people who he found on the street who he kidnapped and transformed into these hideous beasts and killers. And he apparently knew Hick from a long, long time ago, and Hick screwed him over in some way, shape, or form. And so he tried to get punishment on Hick, of course, but Hick was able to fight off all these monsters, right, and get back to him, who had kidnapped Cherry at this point, and he killed the guy. Except unfortunately, Cherry lost these half of these two fingers right here. Funny thing, Last of Us Part 2 also copied that in the amount of time since the last time I uploaded this. So I'm getting copied by literally fucking everyone right now. So thanks, Naughty Dog and Amazon and Bethesda for just copying me. Thanks. Anyway, yeah. So in this current aspect we have right now is that Cherry has lost these two fingers right here, and that kind of sets up the main thing I wanted, the big impact of this first season, because you actually want to. I feel like all the time we see in shows, characters, they go through these like traumatic experiences, and then they just kind of forget about them. You know what I mean? Like it's just not something that like you remember ever. And this is going to signify that officially, like that big sign that something terrible happened. And it's also going to be a big sign for Hick, because throughout the season, Hick from the last season learned that he likes Cherry. He has an emotional attachment to her now, and he doesn't want to lose her. Except at the same time, though, he filled that void that his mind was bothering him with. Because when he was trying to leave Cherry, he was being mentally bothered, like something's messed up and wrong, and he figured this was because she had helped him and he didn't want to leave in debt with her. That's wrong. It was because his mind had for the first time in a long time, had emotional attachment with somebody, a good conversation with someone, and he wanted to keep up with that. And so at the end of the season, Hicks realizes that the problem he was having was simply he was denying himself the ability to, you know, have an emotional connection, have friendship, have a love for something, and he was cutting himself off from all worldly attachments here. And he learns that, and he fills that hole. That was his big struggle for the first season. He was trying to mend, and his new problem now is one of guilt, and it's another one of his core main issues we see throughout the whole series. I even, like, when I was up here, I even made a core little palette for what is wrong with Hick in a nutshell here. You can't read it because it's inverted, but essentially I'll probably show it later when we get to season 4. I'll explain what's going on there. But point being, Hick's main struggle throughout the series is evident in these first 3 seasons, and then it's heavily tackled in the 4th and 5th. You know what I mean? So, yeah. And he currently is feeling guilt for the fact that he has caused Cherry to be gravely harmed for this fact. And you'll see throughout the season that he learns to not really like overcome this guilt as much as he seems to just ignore it. You'll see. what I mean. Essentially, Hick, he, in the very beginning, every time he sees Cherry and he sees these two fingers, he's going to feel that it's his fault for that event happening. And he wants to distance himself from Cherry as much as possible and make sure she is safe, so he's not mentally bothered by not having her around, but also he's not mentally like told with the guilt of seeing that, oh, this is this girl who I've harmed in some way. And Cherry's main struggle throughout this second season is going to be one focused more on fear. Her fear of being alone. This is one that's throughout the entire series, but this is one that she like is tackled in the first to fifth episode, I would say, around this time frame. Like first episode to fourth episode, Cherry is going to be tackling this issue of her incessant fear of being alone and being without Hick, because being in that position where she was with that insane guy in the hospital, it kind of made her feel like she is not strong enough. You know, she needs to be with someone else to protect her in that situation, because she doesn't want to be in a situation where she was defenseless once again. And that's where Hick comes in, because Hick has always been there for her, as evident in the first season when he saved her from her father, until the second season when he's constantly always been there for her. She has always just needed him as a means to stay safe. And that's the main two struggles we're going to see in the season. But season 2, one of my favorite seasons, you'll see why, because it introduced a lot of fun characters. And this is evident in the first episode, but let's get into the music. And the episode 0 for the season that kicks off is going to be about the Inner Circle. The episode I alluded to before in this first episode, I think, but as you all know, it was the Inner Circle was founded by a bunch of okay. Let's get to the lore here. Season 2 is going to be set in Seattle, and since Seattle is ruled by a faction known as the Inner Circle, episode 0 is going to talk about how the Inner Circle came about, and that episode 0 is called the 16 Soldiers. Right, in episode 0, essentially, it follows these group of soldiers. The main one in particular is this black guy. I'm not a racist, seriously. He's black. I don't have a name for him yet. Anyway, and he is like this revolver guy, and he is with this group of wanderers called the 16 Soldiers. And they are in this struggle to find some meaning in their life, essentially. There's a large number of people in this group, and one of the people, in fact, in this group is the guy that Hick keeps on seeing throughout season 1. He wears a black surgical mask and like an overall black overcoat, really, everywhere. And he actually was a member of the 16 Soldiers for a time. And there's also a bunch of other members of the 16 Soldiers I have an idea for. We have a super mutant who, like, is very religious. You know, he reads the Bible, he's a very smart guy. And he, on the back of him, a midget fucking throws like grenades everywhere, or maybe he holds 2 miniguns about. I don't know. It's a super mutant with a midget riding on his back. That's kind of funny. You got another girl who wears like kind of like those 50s and 60s like greaser girl. You know, I'm gonna go have some fun skating with the kids, and she got her own little mallet, hits people with. Maybe throws a grenade up in the air, hits with a baseball bat, skates about. That's kind of fun. And our 4 main stars of the Inner Circle, of course, are the Stars Below the Sky. They were in episode 6, I believe, something like that, in Fallout Season 1. And it's this band of singers, and in this, it's revealed that when these people weren't old, we see the Stars Below the Sky when they're older in Season 1. Except in episode 0, it's revealed that when they were younger and they were part of the 16 Soldiers, they were actually this like punk rock band, you know. They play, in this episode in particular, they play Come On Feel the Noise, stuff like that. Anyway, and so they're struggling to find meaning. And this black guy who owns the revolver, he eventually is able to convince the leader in getting involved in this big-on battle against the current ruling occupying force in Seattle. Which, fun fact, I actually decided to change this faction entirely from what happened in the last season, because I watched a video by Oxhorn who wanted to what he wanted to see in the Fallout TV series, and it got me thinking. And he didn't want to see the Brotherhood of Steel and all those other factions again. He wanted to see new stuff. So I decided to come up with a new faction this time, and they will be discussed later. But the Brotherhood of Steel is being replaced instead with these group of the rich people who lived before the war and lived in Seattle. They all went inside these bunkers, right? And then they came out, and they are now ruling over Seattle, okay? And that is, I'll talk about them more later. We'll talk about them particularly in Season 5, that's ways away. but I will talk about them. But that's just to let you know, it's no longer the Brotherhood of Steel. Instead, these rich people who lived before the bombs and they stayed in their bunkers so they could then come out many, many years later. They're not the same people, of course. This is the families of those folks, but anyway. And they're the ones who currently rule Seattle. And the 16 soldiers decide to help out against with all the other bands of raiders and bandits and thieves who all teamed up to fight against these rich people in Seattle to take on their fight. And because of the help of the 16 soldiers, they go in there, they win the battle, and they take over Seattle. Except all the other raiders and bandits who teamed up together, they're now uneasy and they don't know what to do. And of course, the leader of the Inner Circle, the 16 soldiers, I mean, he realizes, hey, the 16 soldiers, they're done now. I guess it was too good of a dream to be true, but I guess that was that of this journey. Now it's time to start up a new one, and we're going to rule as the Inner Circle. Many members of the 16 soldiers didn't say they're leaving. The black guy with the revolver, he says he's heading out back to his hometown in Montana. The guy who Hick sees throughout season 1 with the doctor's mask, he says he's going to go find some new jobs. Maybe he's going to start hiring some people, start up his own firm or something like that. Some type of reference to make the audience think that he's actually a guy who truly gave Hick jobs in the future, when really he's actually his father. I know, big surprise. We'll talk about that in season 4. Anyway, so that's episode 0. Is this the origin story of the Inner Circle and how they came about? But let's get to the first main episode of the season. Season 2, episode 1. It opens on a scene. It opens on Cherry's hand, her severed hand, essentially, with the 2 missing fingers. It's on Hick's shoulder, and it zooms out from that while Lakeshore Drive is playing, and Hick wakes her up and says, "Hey, we're here." And then we get this nice long scene of, we see the starting areas of the Seattle, the outskirts area where people are selling. It's not the main city parts, it's these people selling stuff. Cherry's looking around in bewilderment. She's like, kind of like, wow, look at all these fun people, It seems like such a lively place. It's got this bright and hopeful opening, you know what I mean? With, once again, Lakeshore Drive playing. And then they eventually come to a little checkpoint. This is a checkpoint the Inner Circle have set up, essentially just to get taxes from people, because once again, the Inner Circle, what their main goal is not to protect people or govern or have any laws like that, but essentially to make certain that the people who rule the city, like those rich folks, they don't come back and they don't enforce their laws on anyone else in Washington. They don't want that crap. They don't want any ruling people, because then they're going to come in and they're going to make Seattle their rule, and they're going to put rules everywhere. The Inner Circle doesn't want rules everywhere. They just simply want to, live in Seattle, in Washington, without any rules. And what their job essentially is that they're a big fighting force who essentially just funds against big bandit attacks and anything like that trying to attack Seattle. They don't enforce any laws inside. If you attack a member of the Inner Circle, you will be tried in a fake court by a fake judge named God Howard, and he will kill you, most likely. And yeah, it's mainly just for the Inner Circle's main enjoyment. In the Inner Circle, they set up this little perimeter around the place so that when people are entering into the city, they have to pay a small little fine of caps, essentially. It's like a protection fee, I guess you could say. And then they get in. And this is what Hick has a little discussion with Cherry real quick about how he doesn't like the Inner Circle and how they really are just like these pieces of shit who just came from raiders, and now they're just trying to pretend they're not that way when really they're the same people. Hick, you'll notice throughout the series, he doesn't believe people can move on from their true nature. This relates more to his own character because he hates himself most of all because of what he did in the past, and since what he did there, he believes that no one else can change it all. We're all doomed to this sick nature of being bandits and raiders and killers and stuff like that. He's starting to see, though, more and more by spending time with Cherry, that's not true, because Cherry's this new exception in his life that he doesn't really believe is, like, true at all. Anyway, so Cherry, she's like, hey, let me go explore around in this area, and I want to go check out what people are doing, you know what I mean? And, well, this is a problem scene I do have, because I want to convey 2 things here. Because once again, like I said, Cherry's fear in this season is being alone, being unsafe without Hick, right? At the same time, though, I wanted to have a scene originally where Cherry says, I want to go take a look around the place. And Hick is like, no, and then she says, come on, and then he sees her severed hand, and once again he feels guilty for doing that, and he says, okay, fine, we'll side with you, because once again it was his fault. He was the one who insisted that they go inside the mental ward and what caused her. So of course he's like, sees her hand, and he's thinking, I'm rubbing my nose right now because I got a lot of snot in there, But of course Hick is like, oh hey, I gotta go. I don't want you to go do that. But now he realizes, hey, because last time he forced her to do something, she got hurt, and he feels guilty, and he lets her do that. But at the same time, though, Cherry is afraid of being alone, so why would she just be so like unhesitant to like just run away from Hick and go exploring? You know what I mean? So you know what I mean? It's a problem of a scene. I don't know what to do here. All that I know is that I will decide between those two events, and I will decide later. I'll probably have a big old document I'll write at some point about what each scene is. But I'm trying to think in my head right now what we're gonna do. I'm gonna go blow my nose real quick, and then I'll come back to talking to you fellas. We are unpaused. All right. As I was saying, so we're trying to think here. What is the situation here? This is like how I write things verbatim. Like I just walk around and I start thinking, what is the best option here? Because I want to have that scene where Hick is like, okay, fine, you can go do whatever you want. At the same time, though, Cherry has to have this fear of being alone and being unsafe. She doesn't want to be put back in that place where she doesn't have something. So I guess in this scene we could just probably cut away and say, oh yeah, I'm Cherry. I have Hick right here. I can just run back to him at any time. I'm completely safe here. And we're going to have alluded throughout other parts of the series of Cherry being alone, being about Hick. And she'll have flashbacks to the part where she was in the asylum and she was alone in this darkness and she had no idea what to do. It's this big fear she has to confront about having to, like, you know, not be alone. I don't know how exactly she's going to confront this fear exactly. All I know is it will be this big scene where Hick says, hey, I'm not leaving you by any means, don't worry. Or something like that. I don't know what I'm doing. Point being here, that's Cherry's fear. I want to be that way, and we'll ride around it. Point being, Cherry decides to go exploring in this little line while Hick tries to make his way through into the city. And they get caught, and she bumps into this other guy, another black guy named Colt, who also uses revolvers everywhere, and his partner, a Russian guy named Wilford, for the most part. Wilford's lore, I don't know how I'm going to explain it at some point. Maybe I'll have a side episode where I'll just explain Wilford's lore one day. But for what being, he's just the partner of Colt, and Colt is a bounty hunter who was recently out exploring in the outskirts of the Waste trying to find some dude or something like that. He doesn't tell much to Cherry other than that, and they're having trouble getting into the checkpoint because of some other reason. Wilford has some heavily armored weapons on him, and the Inner Circle's a little nervous about why in the hell he has that on him in the first place. Like, they don't want to get shot with a missile launcher once again. So, but Cherry's able to convince them or some other reason like that, and they leave, and she's like, okay, that's very nice. And it's our first establishment of Colt, a character who has a bigger part you'll see throughout the series. He kind of gets smaller bits more and more in Season 2, and he gets a major part in Season 3, 4, and 5. Okay. But that's just this introduction scene, as this being this nice, Colt's character is like this really nice farm hand type of guy, I guess you could say. He's not like some southern, like, he's got his like own little grass here. You're like, oh, what's up, little lady? Want me to help you out right here? He's more of like this, kind of this really nice sort of guy, you know what I mean? Who's dedicated to his ideals and like his job and what he wants to do, and he's just very normal dude, I would have to say. And I guess his relationship, if you'll see throughout the series, that Colt has a sort of emotional what do you call it? I'm trying to think of what I use. He has like a sort of romantic infatuation with Cherry, and he does would like to pursue something there with her because he thinks she's like this really cute girl. I want to go talk to her. Except throughout the series, you'll see repeatedly that he's just terrible at saying this over and over again until eventually Hick even shuts him down on the subject. And I don't know how to exactly describe his character. Holt is like this really nice guy, I guess you could say, and he's just continuously like put in a situation where he's like, what? Huh? He's always surprised about stuff, you know what I mean? And he's just maybe you'll get an idea of his character more as I talk throughout Season 2. But point being is Colt's a really nice guy who is just kind of flawed when it comes to like thinking about things with his big brain, you know what I mean? So anyway, Hick and Cherry both get brought into the city, and Cherry admits to Hick that she had in fact lied to him. She said that someone in Seattle was going to take care of her, when that was not the truth. She simply just had no idea where to go other than Seattle. So, yeah. And she's expecting Hick to be upset about this matter, but Hick once again is at the state in mind where he doesn't want to leave Cherry. He does want to leave her, but it's not for a reason of like he doesn't like her. It's more or less a reason from his own guilt of what he did, the fact that he doesn't think, oh, I shouldn't be with Cherry right now. I don't deserve to be with her, or anything of that sort. And you'll see that throughout episodes 1 to 4, Hick starts to become more and more attached to Cherry and more open to the idea of staying with her. So right now, when but in the scene, he knows he doesn't want to be with her. He actively doesn't want to, but at the same time, he doesn't want her to be unsafe. So of course, that's you'll see throughout episodes 1 to 4, Hick's justification for being with Cherry is always, I have to make sure she's safe, okay? But once again, Hick's mind is trying to tell him what he should do. Hick's mind's trying to tell him, hey, you shouldn't be with Cherry. You should be walking across the wasteland killing raiders. You shouldn't be and have a friendship. That's not what you deserve. You don't deserve to be settling down right now. You don't deserve any of this crap. But once again, his own soul, his own heart is trying to tell him, hey, you can't live this way. You need to be emotionally attached to someone. You need human interaction. You can't like keep on ignoring like these emotional needs from a human being. And you'll see he doesn't want to have those emotional needs, because doing that, becoming more and more human, means he's going to have to confront his past at some point. And he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to have to do that. He feels guilty for what he did. You know what I mean? I just slammed the desk. But Hick feels guilty for what he did in the past, and he doesn't want to have to confront that emotion. Except the more you'll see throughout the series, the more he chooses not to confront that past, instead believing that the issues that are arising from him not doing that and trying to solve those, he's just building one dam that's going to burst. You'll see that every single issue in the series that Hick really faces does derive from his past, which I will get to at the end of this log. Anyways, point being, Hick's like, alright, I'll help you out, Cherry. Sure, I'll stay with you a little bit longer in Seattle until you get you a nice, safe place to stay. In this first episode, it's really just, nothing big is happening in this first episode for the most part. It's just kind of an introduction to all the main elements at play here. But essentially, Hick and Cherry mess around for a little bit until eventually they catch wind that bounty hunters are after them. Okay, Hick did not in fact kill Cherry's dad up in Spokane, and he is a little pissed off. He's a big like ammo and bullet manufacturing guy. He has his own like fracture companies in Washington, in Spokane, and he is not happy about the fact that his daughter was stolen from him, and this guy took her. And he's mainly just upset with both of them, and he wants both of them to get killed for the most part, because he's like a cripple now. And yeah, and he's sending bounty hunters after them. So, of course, Hick and Cherry, in an attempt to try and divert from these guys, of course, they try and take a look around, and they actually have to end up going, in an attempt to try and hide from these people, they go to a carnival ride, I guess you could say. It has a big old Ferris wheel, a bunch of carnivals and stuff like that, and it's entirely operated by ghouls, because before the war, what happened is that these teenagers were operating these machineries at the carnival, and essentially doing this job day in, day out, just deprived them of just emotion. They became just, like, they aren't even depressed anymore. They just have no, like, souls and emotion. So when the nuclear war hit, they became ghouls, essentially, except they had nowhere to go, really. So they just chose to stick here and work, right? And they got this because, in part, their manager, their boss, was a Mr. Gutsy robot. Not the sergeant one. I think that's it. I think it's a Mr. Gutsy, the one that's just the average, everyday robot, not the one that's a military thing or anything like that. I'm worried. Someone's above me right now. I'm hoping I'm not waking them up. Anyway. So they go to this carnival to try and divert from them, and once again Cherry meets with Colt. Once again, she probably meets with him at another point in this episode, but this is the third time she probably meets him, and she starts talking more and more. They have some fun at the carnival for a little bit, and Colt reveals that he's a bounty hunter to her, and that he's looking for some guy who kidnapped some girl right now. And she's like, oh, that's kind of funny. We've been having some conflict with people very similar to that. And eventually Hick and Colt both draw the lines together and they realize what's going on, and a big old fight erupts out. And actually, when I first came up with the scene, it was originally from the song "Bad Dog No Biscuits" from the anime Cowboy Bebop. Have you have not watched that? You're an idiot. Anyway, so just look up that song "Bad Dog No Biscuits." You can probably get an idea for what the action scene is. But Hick and Cherry, they're trying to run away from Colt, who tries to pursue them, and Colt wants to kill Hick, and so since he likes Cherry a lot, he's like this, like, I gotta go, I just want to talk to her. And so we get in this big fight between Colt. He goes chasing after Cherry, who like blends in through crowds and eventually gets on the carousel. Not carousel, the wind. What's the giant thing? The giant thing that goes right around her. I forget what that thing's called. I forget what that. How could I forget what? It's the wheel. It's the wheel something. How can I forget what this is called? This is like the most generic ride out there. It's the wheel. You know, it's the big old wheel you go on. Anyway, she goes on that wheel to try and escape from Colt, and Colt gets on one of the lower carriages to try and chase after her. And then you have Hick, and he's getting in this big fight against Wilford, this guy with this really advanced suit of power armor that he built himself. And they get in this big fight. And they even have this joke probably where it's like the, you know, the hammers where you test how strong you are. Hick like tries to hit Wilford, or Wilford tries to hit Hick, or something like that. They mess around with that until eventually Hick gets around right back up where the wheel thing is, just like Cherry, and he ends up in the same cart as her. And the thing gets completely detached from its maintenance pole, and the giant wheel starts barreling down. It's this big action scene of the carousel destroying everything, and they start rolling down the city blocks of Seattle. And of course, Wilford and Colt try and chase off after her because Colt even has a horse named Bruma. It's white. I like that. I like white horses named Bruma because that was my horse in Red Dead Redemption 2. Anyway, yeah, Colt has a horse, and they start chasing after him. Except no shots get hit at all because he's trying not to hit Cherry. And then the episode ends with both of them crashing this giant wheel, getting back on their bike, and going into hiding for the next couple of days. So nothing big happens in episode 1 really, besides this big action scene, just setting up the overall conflict. Episode 2 of season 2. I'm already getting tired here, but we're gonna finish this. We're gonna wrap this. We're gonna finish this today. And Hick and Cherry are now at a bar, laying low. And Cherry is talking to the bar owner, a girl named Delilah. Now, Delilah is this character she's a bit of a mess for me, but so I'm just going to explain her now so there's no complications on what's going on. Delilah is a character who doesn't trust anybody for the most part. She learned this persona because Delilah was a girl just like Cherry, who was like this wide-eyed girl who went to Seattle and was filled with joy and stuff like that, except she got betrayed by her own boyfriend, the one she loved. And she got betrayed, and she ended up working as a sex worker for much of her life. This is actually based off of, originally, this is going to sound fucked up, but Cherry's original character I had for her was based off of a Fallout 4 character I had, and I wanted to make it a stealth character, and I wanted to make it a female. And I was thinking, okay, what's something we can make that would make sense? She had a tiny little knife, you know, Pikmin's knife from Fallout 4, and that was what the build was based around. And I was thinking, what would this knife be like? What's kind of character are we thinking? And my original, this is going to sound fucked up, because I was like, not even like, this was like 2 years ago. I was like 14, 13 when I wrote this. And Cherry was like originally forced by her father to be like this sex worker and like essentially bribe money out of these other tribes, you know, from these other people, and that's how it worked. But I retired that idea because for the most part I was trying to get into writing contest, and I didn't think that was gonna like that was gonna sound fucked up if I was saying that one of my characters was a sex worker for her childhood. Not childhood. She was like 18 when she started. She's 20 in the series. Anyway, point being here, I retired that idea because it sounded fucked up, and so we made Cherry a much more of the innocent girl we saw in the series because it just wouldn't make much sense for Cherry to, you know, go from this woman who had to like be forced into seduction like her whole life, and that's what she was trained in. And then Hick trains her to like be a killer. Why she would stick with using a knife, and also why she would even stick with Hick, and why she wouldn't have such emotional trauma for having to do that her whole life. But that makes more sense for Delilah's character, in my opinion, because her whole character is all about trust. She doesn't trust anyone. She's very close-guarded and all about business. This is what she learned, that when she was betrayed by her boyfriend, in order to get out of this sex working position that she wound up in after being betrayed by him, she had to constantly be doing business deals and doing stuff like that, learning trust and interest in like respect from all these different people eventually, so she could buy her way out of that business. And then she started to rise her way up in this business until eventually Delilah is well known by almost everyone in Seattle. She owns this bar as this small little business of hers that's made her hub, but she is mainly known by everyone because she has done favors for so many people. She's well respected by everybody that she's just kind of well known. Uh, Originally her character was about this person who worked for the NCR as a negotiator. I didn't like that, so I scrapped it. It's much more sense for Delilah to be this like close connected girl who is hired by people to do stuff. She's sort of this middleman. People want, for example, a bank to be robbed, so they go to Delilah, and then Delilah hires other people to go and do that for them. And she's like this very person who keeps her cards close to her chest, and she doesn't trust people. And Cherry and Hick, they go to her bar, and they get involved in another fight once again. You see people who don't like Delilah come up to the bar, and they start demanding they do some other crap for her. And since Hick and Cherry are in the fight between this gang and Delilah, they help her out inadvertently. And Cherry and Delilah get away. However, Hick gets captured by these gang members who have no idea about his bounty status until he tells them about it. And so they decide to hold on to him then. And yeah. And so Cherry and Delilah, of course, Cherry wants to go save Hick again. Once again, she doesn't have him, and she's once again, we see in this episode her fears of being alone. But then Delilah steps in and acts as a sort of protector in a way for Cherry. And Cherry and Delilah sees this girl who's like fearful. She doesn't have any way. She doesn't know how to defend herself or anything like that, or any of that sort. And she just sees as someone who's probably. And she also saw Hick in the opening. And how just Cherry describes who Hick is, and on their journey to try and save him. Delilah, by the way, helps Cherry try and save Hick in this episode. Delilah starts to develop this idea that she's just like me when I was a kid, and when I was her age, I got screwed over, and I had to work my way up my whole life. And that's why Delilah's personality of trust comes in, is that she doesn't trust Hick because she's worried Hick is going to just come in and crush Cherry's life or do something that's going to harm her forever, emotionally anyway, not just physically but emotionally. And then so this episode goes about for a while. We have some fun back and forth between Delilah and Cherry. You know, we develop Delilah as this fun little character. She's kind of like Cherry's only like girlfriend, I guess you could say, in the series. You know, not like girlfriend. Originally, fun fact, before I became a homophobe, I originally had Delilah and Cherry in a romantic relationship occasionally. It wasn't for long. It was more or less a fling. This had to do more with Cherry. My original justification was Cherry, after spending a life as the sex worker and being abused by her father, she didn't have a romantic attachment to men. She had more of an attachment to women. And so Delilah and Cherry, they kind of become a fling, and they screw each other one night. That was originally the story. But I didn't really like that because, once again, I wanted to keep Cherry more innocent. You know, she's in her 20s, but she's never really been outside in the outside world, so it doesn't make much sense for her to just be screwing people, you know what I mean? So we cut that out entirely, and Delilah is much more of like this, kind of like an aunt to Cherry in a lot of way. They have fun, they have some girl fun, listen to music, stuff like that, going to a mall. Season 3, they actually do go to a mall and they listen to music, that's fun. And that's the kind of character I like Delilah and Cherry being. So at the end of the episode, Delilah works out a deal between the bounty hunters who were after Hick and all of them, and she's like, hey, I'm Delilah, I know this mob boss in the city or something like that. And they're like, oh shit, we don't want to touch with that guy. Ugh. And so they all decided to piss off from Hick and Cherry for a little bit. And the original gang who were attacking Delilah, they were upset because she had got them a shipment of jet, except this stuff was just not good. And so they went to Delilah like, hey, what's up with our jet? It turns out they just weren't using it properly. Kind of a dumb joke, I know. Anyway, so the big episode ends, though, with Cherry and Delilah and Hick arguing about who deserves to be with who. Hick does not want Cherry to be with Delilah because, once again, Hick is in this position where he only cares for Cherry's safety. And when he sees Delilah, he just sees a ticking time bomb. She is a verbatim someone who thrives on just screwing people over, on gambling, on making negotiations with people, stuff like that. She literally is like in the criminal underworld, and he knows that literally in the episode we see, she gets attacked by people for just dumb reasons. He doesn't even know people are going to be actually upset with her one day and come back and kill her. So Hick doesn't want to be Delilah to be with Cherry at all. And Delilah doesn't want Cherry to be with Hick, as the reasons mentioned before, because Hick is this guy who verbatim is just being hunted by everybody. He kills, his only thing that he's really good at is killing other people. And she just sees somebody who is just ready to drop Cherry at the sign of anything. But Cherry ultimately decides at the end of the episode that, hey, Delilah, I respect you a ton, and I thank you for trying to, like, help me, but, like, Hick is my guy, you know? We've made it all the way here across the wasteland, and he's been the one who's always been there to protect me. I'm not leaving him by any means. This episode, Cherry kind of more or less is more than ever. She kind of starts to, this shell we see of her, her fear of being alone and being defenseless, more or less, is sort of shown here. It's built up throughout these first 3 episodes, her big fear of this, of what happened at the asylum, and she kind of throws it off. Cherry has this nature of being sarcastic and not really showing her true emotions to Hick in this season, and except this kind of boils over to the point where she has to, like, in episode 4, you'll see at the very end of episode 4, Cherry, like, openly bawls her eyes out and admits to Hick, hey, I'm, like, terrified right now of the events that happened at that place, and I can't do anything without you, Hick. Like, you're my lifeline here. You know what I mean? But that's for times later. So she ultimately decides to stay with Hick, and Delilah decides, okay, well, I guess I'm going to do my best I can to help these people. And she gives them an old abandoned building that she was given by some other folks and lets them live in that. And that's where the episode ends. So episode 3 now. Episode 3 and 4 are kind of a mess because I don't know what the plots of these are. But essentially, Hick and Cherry, or the episode 3 opens up with Hick and Cherry. Hick's trying to fix up this house because there's a hole in the roof. And Cherry is trying to make breakfast for them. And, you know, we got the fun song, I think Bread and Butter or something like that. It's probably in a Walmart commercial. You've heard it before. He likes bread and butter. And that's how that's opening up. Hick's trying to fix the roof. He falls through the roof while she's trying to make him toast or something. And he says, okay, I'll just take the toast. He falls through the roof. It would be this funny scene where he's like, I don't care who the hell puts butter, who the hell puts jam and peanut butter on their fucking toast. And then he falls to the roof, and he's like, okay, fine, I'll live with that, whatever. Yeah. And in this episode, Hick is like, okay, well, we need to make sure Cherry can, like, sustain herself. We have no food here at all. Like, this is this old rotten-ass bread. So we need to start making a business. And his only business he knows is killing people. So I'm guessing through episodes 3 and 4, Hick and Cherry has become these problem solvers for the most part, doing these small-time jobs. And for episodes 3 and 4, for the most part, we see Cherry starting to build this mold more and more and more. She's becoming very fearful. It culminates in episode 4, where the episode opens up with Cherry having a nightmare of Hick. They're out scavenging, and Cherry finds, like, some type of item or some sort of nature, I think. I originally had this episode planned out. It was going to be like a reference to the Vault universe or something like that and what was happening here. And she turns around while they're scavenging, and Hick's not there. And she's, like, looking all around for him until eventually she winds up in the hallway of the asylum once again, and then she wakes up, of course, with Hick calling her, you know. And then throughout this episode 4, we see more and more. They get caught in some big event, and until eventually it culminates where they fall down in this big old hole after some explosion, I'm betting. And Cherry is, like, lost in the darkness. She doesn't see Hick anywhere, but she eventually finds him. He got knocked out, and she wakes him up. And Cherry, like, cries her eyes out, saying, "Hey, bro, I'm completely terrified right now from the events that happened there, and, like, I just can't do this, you know, anymore." And Hick essentially in this position, he's like, "Hey, I'll never leave you, bro. I'm not leaving you, okay?" And this is a big scene because Hick, throughout all the first season, episodes 1 to 4 in this instance, has been constantly trying to say, yeah, I'm just going to set you up. I'm going to find you someplace to say, and then I'm leaving. I'm going to get this business set up, and then I'm leaving. I'm going to do this job, then I'm leaving. And then eventually Hick finally says here, okay, no, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not leaving you anywhere, okay? Because in Hick's eyes, from Cherry saying this, he's like, I'm the only one who can really protect her, once again. And we start to see also that Hick's guilt, once again, for what he caused on Cherry, for losing both these fingers, you know, he is not, like, acknowledging, oh yeah, but that's not my fault, you know, I was trying my hardest and I still failed. No, he simply is just ignoring that factor. He's simply just saying, no, I have to be with Cherry now. I just want to be with Cherry. That's the only thing that matters now. And that starts to build more and more and more as we see, because at the end of episode 4, it is revealed some people blast open the cave they're in, and it is this gang of people who are against the Inner Circle. It's this group of people who want to fight against the Inner Circle because they don't like the fact that the Inner Circle is just ruling all over Seattle, all its resources, and not letting an actual government come in and rule the people. So, they can pull all these other people out of poverty, and stop dying. Essentially, it's a socialist group, and they want to rule over Seattle with their communism and socialism and stuff like that. And the leader of this group is Cherry's mother, who left Cherry when she was 6 years old to her father a long time ago. Except the big reveal here is not just that, but is also that Cherry's mother, her name is Karen. Yeah, okay, get the jokes out the way. Karen, knew Hick before these events. Episode 5 is heavily just about Hick and Karen coming to a deal here, essentially. Karen, for whatever reason, keeps on alluding to the fact that Hick did something really fucked up before, and she thought she could never forgive him, and was hoping she would never see him again. And Hick is sitting here why in the hell did you leave your daughter? He had all these other reasons. And Karen's like, don't you dare question my moral authority over the man who verbatim kills people for a fucking living. And so essentially, Hick is just fucking okay. He's essentially upset. He didn't want to see Karen once again ever again, because as we see throughout the series, every time something bad happens to Hick, it usually is because of something in his past coming back to haunt him, and that's what Karen's doing here. So he's like, okay, fuck it. I guess I won't be with Cherry. She's gonna be with her mother now. She's gonna be safe forever, and I'm just gonna leave. I'm gonna go live in Seattle, my own little business again. You won't see me ever again. However, Karen is a bitch. Okay, this is she's a fucking terrible person. Because she knows that Hick is awful, and Hick did something terrible to her. But she also knows Hick is extremely reliable, and extremely good at killing things. And extremely good at, taking down organizations. And so she goes to Hick, and she's like, actually, no, I'm not taking my daughter with me. I'm not going to do that. And Hick's sitting here what the fuck? He's currently being haunted by Karen. He doesn't even want to have to think about her right now, but he knows he can't just leave a Cherry from Karen or something like that, because once again he wants to be with Cherry. Of course, we saw that in the tunnel, but that thought of him staying with her was quickly depleted the moment he saw Karen again. He's back to the same old ideal. Whenever Hick gets confronted with his past, he automatically goes back in character progression. He doesn't want to be with Cherry anymore. He wants to keep her safe. He doesn't want to think about her anymore. He doesn't deserve to be with Cherry, is what he's trying to tell himself. And he wants to just give her away to Karen, except Karen is like, no, actually, how about if you do some stuff for me, then I will keep Cherry here. And this big line that I really I wrote for Karen, is that Karen is like, I love Cherry. She is my daughter. She is my child. But if she's my child, then this organization, this group of people, they are my children as well. And I will not sacrifice them to focus on being a mother right now, okay? And she wants her group to succeed. She wants to rule over Seattle, take down the Inner Circle, and pull all these other people out of poverty and just destroy all these other rich wastelanders who were completely just manipulating all these people, all these gang members and mafia members and stuff like that. Karen's message stems from this belief that she has to help these more unprivileged, these not so privileged people, but her way of doing that is by killing all the other privileged people. You know what I mean? I do this, makes everything cloudy. How fun is that? Anyway, so that's Karen's belief. Anyway, and Hick, he's reluctant, and he's fine, I'll do this shit for you, and that's whatever. And Cherry, the moment when she gets back with her mother, this character development, she kind of starts to become more comfortable in her own skin again. She stops getting the nightmares once again. She's feeling very happy, and she's even gets more outlandish. Hick in these episodes from 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever, he starts training Cherry how to use a handgun, how to drive his motorcycle, stuff like that. And we have some really fun scenes between the two of them. But it's all under this underlying tone, I would say, kind of as if it's a parent divorce, I feel like. Hick is with Cherry, and he's like, man, this is so nice being with her. But at the same time, though, I have her bitch of a mother looking down over me right now, knowing that I'm going to have to go do some shit for her, for an organization I don't like, okay? Because I just want the best for Cherry right now. And this goes on for a good couple episodes, and I'll tell you the plot of each one. So, episode 5, I don't know what happens in episode 5. All I know is that Hick helps Karen in some way, and episode 5 is mainly just there to establish what's going to be happening for the rest of the season. Episode 6 is called Man-Eater. I mean, Lady Killer or something like that. The episode opens up on the song Man-Eater by the Hall & Oates. It's this guy who is a murderer, and he's been going through Seattle right now, killing a lot of women. He's like this womanizer. He's very attractive. He has his music. He thinks he's like this pump, like, I'm the lady killer, bro. And that's his attitude. Except he one day kills a member of Karen's organization, and she doesn't like that. Except she also wants to win over the trust of the people, because if you right now people view the inner circle as, hey, they're whatever, but they're keeping all the bad guys out of Seattle. That's what they think, and she wants to win over people's public perception. And so she's like, hey, Hick, some guy killed our one of our members of our group. You and Cherry both go and do that. And Hick's like, why the hell am I bringing Cherry along with me? And she's like, well, I want some insurance. You know what I mean? If I tell Cherry that you both are going on a mission, she's going to complete it. She's going to want to go and complete it. And you can't tell her that you're not going to do that, are you? So, of course, if you want to, so of course, she doesn't want Hick to just, like, go on a mission and then just leave her with Cherry. She wants to use him for the fact that for some reason, Karen doesn't think Hick is a good guy. She thinks Hick is a piece of shit for what he did to her. And she believes that, she just thinks, okay, just because he likes my daughter, just because he has some love for my daughter, does not make things right, okay? Does not make things right. He is still a piece of shit, okay? And just because he likes my daughter right now, doesn't make anything right, okay? He just doesn't even deserve her, okay? He can't use her. He can't finally, now that after he robbed me of everything, finally take my daughter for his own, like, sick way of trying to live in this world that no longer loves him, right? That's her view of it. And so this goes on, episode 6, they find the guy. They even get confronted, I think, in episode 6 by these rich people who used to rule over Seattle, which we'll talk about later, anyway. And that's what happens there. And then episode 7, I really like this episode. It's a big old bank robbery. And I really like this episode because it introduces a very important character for season 3. And I don't know his name, actually. We're going to have to go to find the guy's name. I always forget. Alright, I found the guy's name. I always forget the guy's name. But there's this great illustrator online called Kay Pelto, and I think it's a she, it could be a he for all I know. They make this great illustrations of Fallout art, and one of these characters they have is a guy named Ross. You can look it online. Just look up the image, Fallout Dr. Dalla. One of the fan arts is this guy with his beard. This really great artist is being looked over by one of these scientists from the Old World Blues DLC for New Vegas, looking over by Dr. Dalla. That guy's name is Ross, and I really liked his character design, and I kind of the way they drew him, I kind of drew up a character for him. But yeah, so I'm stealing that Kay Pelto. I'm stealing him, and I'm going to use him here. Anyway, so Ross is this guy who works very closely with Delilah, and they have kind of sort of over the course of time working together, sort of developed this relationship and friendship together. And once again, Delilah's this girl who does not trust anyone. She doesn't open herself up to anyone. She always has this business facade of like charisma and stuff, but she doesn't really tell anyone, except Ross is one of the few people she has come close to opening herself up to again. And Ross even has a few like information on what she used to do, and that gets developed more in season 3, so we'll talk about that later. But for now, Ross and his 2 friends who he works with, this woman, you'll see in also these arts as well, but these 2 dudes, Ross essentially works for Delilah along with these 2 other partners, and they are criminals, and they steal stuff, and they do stuff, they're mercenaries, they're whatever Delilah needs. There's some great manpower. And Ross and them all team up with Hick and Cherry and Delilah to do a bank robbery of sorts. Because the episode even opens up with Cherry and Delilah infiltrating a big old house, like penthouse party, a bunch of other rich wastelanders, and trying to get into the vault, trying to get some money. The main thing is that they're trying to get funds for Karen's organization, trying to get bottle caps so they can purchase some stuff. And they get involved in this big old heist. And they do succeed. Cherry, they fight even the super mutant guy from the 16 Soldiers. He's there in this episode as well, in the bank robbery. And they get escaped. They get old. Things get complicated. They have a big old fight at the end, but they do succeed ultimately, and they get the funds to the organization. But the very end of the episode, Hick and Ross have this big conversation. Hick tries to explain to Ross that, hey man, why are you in this life of thievery? Well, Ross first explains to Hick essentially why Cherry wants to be with Hick so much, and this is sort of developing that motive, because Hick, once again, ever since he saw Cherry, he wants to be with her, except he still feels that guilt for what he did to her, and mostly now he's feeling the guilt of what he did to Karen. He didn't know Cherry was Karen's daughter. He doesn't want to be involved with Karen's daughter. He doesn't want to be involved with his past at all. He feels so guilty for what he did. Except at the same time, though, his heart is telling him, be with Cherry. Be with her. Except, once again, he doesn't want to confront the guilt, though. He doesn't want to confront that guilt of his past. He instead just wants to be with Cherry. The issues of him having that emotional disparity, of not having emotional attachments, and why his mind and heart is trying to tell him to go and be with people and have friendships, is all stemming from the fact that his past is walling him off from being that normal person. His past is telling him, hey, don't be normal, don't do that, you don't deserve it, because of what you did here, you don't deserve any of that. And Hick doesn't want to realize that. Hick doesn't want to fix the past part. He doesn't want to do that. He just wants to keep fixing all the problems that are stemming from that. And he just believes, oh yeah, I'll just be with Cherry here. And Ross here, he tells how his friends, they always were there for him in the beginning, and they always will have been, even though if they're all thieves, you know what I mean? He's still just going to be with each other because that's what's right. When you're with someone for this long amount of time, you kind of start to rely and trust them. Kind of how Cherry, she has been with Hick this long of time, and she's always been with him. And Hick, also having spent so much time with Cherry, wants to be with her as well. And then Hick has this conversation with Ross, of course, about how, hey, this is not a good life to be in. This kind of is alluding to what Hick used to do. We still don't know what Hick used to do. I'm not sure if I talked about it in the last episode or not, of what Hick did, but it's alluding to the fact that Hick did a job or some type of profession that he did not like. He doesn't like now. That he does not respect now. And that whatever it did led him down a path to where he is today. And he's trying to tell Ross, why are you doing the same thing I did? You still have the opportunity to get out. You still have the opportunity to do something in your life that will have meaning, that you will care for. That's something he's trying to tell Ross. And Ross is like, whatever, man. This is like what I've been doing forever. I'll be stuck in it. And this becomes a bigger, and that's how the conversation ends. But this becomes a much bigger part in season 3, where Ross actually does start to follow this path, and he does go down this path of trying to be a good guy, not just be some thief. So we're almost nearing our end now. Episode 8, one of my other favorite episodes. Hick, is at the end of episode 7, Hick sets up a small little camp and back at the place or something like that, and he decides to leave Cherry for a little bit to go take a smoke break, except by doing this he is captured by Colt inadvertently, and that's what episode 8 is about, is Colt trying to, capture Hick and bring him about, except Colt and Hick end up getting captured themselves by some other Hicks, fun fact. And one funny joke I have prepared is that Colt will be telling him right now, Wilford is back at the camp, capturing Cherry as we speak. And then we cut back to Wilford, who is this really nice old man who decides to sit down and have tea or some type of coffee or something like that with Cherry, have some fun conversations with them. And then Colt and Hick, essentially, they both dislike each other, and they have to learn to work together for this episode, kind of like episode 6 in season 1, except now with Colt. And essentially, Hick has to break it to Colt, essentially, once again alluding to his past, once again. But it essentially tells Colt that he has been doing this bounty hunting job for so long now, except he never dares question what he has been doing, I'm guessing. He simply thinks, oh, this is bounty for something, so therefore, this someone wronged some other person, so I have full moral obligations. And right, there's a bug that's flying about me, I'm scared right now. So he can go and just be a bounty hunter and not think about it. But he never thinks about, hey, right now you're arresting Hick and Cherry, and you have no idea who in the world's paying for that. And Colt, and then Hick starts to think more and more about what Colt's position is, and he touches bone or something like that. For whatever reason, Hick realizes that Colt is out here because Colt's trying to prove something, or he's trying to find somebody. And that's the truth of it. Because Colt is actually the son of that guy, the black guy we saw in episode 0 with these 16 soldiers, the guy who went back to Montana. Colt is from Montana, and he was a young guy, and he was living with his mother and father his whole life, and everything was great, except his father left him at a very young age for no reason, leaving him and his mother alone out there. We learn this is because Colt's father, the guy from the 16 soldiers, he didn't want to be that way, or he didn't want to be a raider, he didn't want to be doing any of that, he didn't want to do that anymore, he thought he could just settle down and be a family member. But he was just starting to see that when he was around, he felt like he was transforming his son into him, and he didn't want that. And so he decided to leave them and go back to the life he was leading, which is like this wasteland wanderer. He makes an appearance towards season 4 and season 5, Colt's father, he returns, but that's essentially what Colt's getting at, is that Colt's a bounty hunter, and he came to Seattle because he wants to find his father, and he wants to essentially kill him and prove to him that he's a man, that he should get revenge on him for abandoning him and his mother his whole life. And Hick is able to break through to him because, once again, this is alluding to Hick's past. Hick explains to Colt that he knows why killing someone and being this effective at like using guns and stuff is so great, because it makes you feel powerful. It makes you feel like you're dominating these people. You have strength. And this is all related to, once again, when I get to season 4, when I talk about Hick's past and why I think Hick's my favorite character I've ever made. But yeah, so then they have this big final fight with all along the watchtower playing. Hick and Colt, by the way, were captured by some Hicks, I guess you could say. These like really like idiotic people who captured them, and they were sick of both Hick and Colt for what they were doing to him. He was a bounty hunter. Hick was killing them probably for some reason. And then they have this big final fight where these people trap them in a barn and light it on fire, except Hick and Colt escape. And then All Along the Watchtower by Jimi Hendrix plays, and they fight them all off. And then the episode ends with, Colt and Wilford, like, signing, hey, thanks, man. See you later. I guess we're just going to be neutral from now on. Never see each other again. That's not true, though, because this episode, this goes straight into the finale episode, which is I think it's the Inner Circle Part 1 and Part 2. I think that's what we're calling it. But it's episodes 8. I think it's episodes 9 and 10. Episodes 9 and 10. You know how we had And Don't Tread the Bear in Season 1, Part 1 and Part 2? Well, that's what each final 2 episodes in the series is going to be from now on, Part 1 and Part 2. These extra long episodes that are about the same plot. But Hick and Cherry are essentially tasked by Karen to do this big final siege where they're going to go to the top of the Seattle Space Needle and install a radio jammer. They're going to take down the Inner Circle's current radio. They're not going to take it down, but they're going to essentially hijack its signal booster so they can put up their own radio broadcast and start streaming to all these other people, right? That's their plan anyway. And that's what the ultimate episode's all about, is Hick and Cherry trying to fight their way to the top of Seattle. And at the end of episode Part 1, they think, oh no, we're going to lose, except at the beginning of Part 2, it's revealed Hick and Colt and Wilford show up, and they help them out, fighting off the Inner Circle to get to the top of the Space Needle, and they eventually do, except right before they're about to get to the top of the Space Needle, though, Hick has this big scene where Hick is like about to free him. He essentially is viewing like Cherry, and he traps her once again down by herself once again. And he says, okay, you stay here. I'm going to go to the top of the Space Needle now, and I'm going to just install the radio jammer and just leave you. Right? Because after I do this, like, Karen, she's going to take you, and it's going to be whatever. And Hick's kind of like starting to think here, like, I don't even, like, do anything in my life here. I'm just some killer, bro. It wouldn't even matter. If I died right now, and I don't think it would be better for Cherry. And Hick has this big moment. He's climbing to the top of this big, long needle, and the Space Needle, and he's about to install the radio jammer, but the thing falls and snaps in half, and he's about to fall off the building. But Cherry, she gets this resolve because, once again, she's, after her season 2, after getting all this experience, she's no longer afraid of being alone. She has confidence in her skills, and alongside the help of Colt and Wilford, she comes to the top of the Space Needle, and she slides down the giant needle as it's sliding down. Hick's about to fall off, but she catches him with the help of Wilford using like some crank on a suit. And Hick, right at this moment, when he gets caught by her, and Cherry's like, I'm not letting you go anywhere. And this is this big final reveal in the season, where Hick is essentially realizes, bruh, I want to be with Cherry. Like, it's either this or nothing else. I don't care what Karen says, I want to be with her. So then they install the radio jammer, they escape off the needle, of course, and then Hick returns to Karen. and everything is about to proceed as he was expecting it to. Karen's like, Hick, you're a piece of shit. I hate you. Thank you for bringing my daughter back to me safely and for bringing my organization up to where it is. Now, if you I ever see you again, however, I will kill you on sight and say that you were, for some reason, drunk and mad and some reason like that, and justify that to Cherry. And Hick's like, okay, whatever, I don't care. And this is the final scene, the big scene in the series. Hick is leaving the building. He's leaving this compound where Karen's group force is, and we see him again. Hick's father is the guy in the black surgical mask, the guy from the 16 soldiers, who the audience is led to believe is a real person who used to provide jobs to Hick, but that's not the truth. It's really all just an illusion in Hick's head. This guy in the surgical mask is Hick's father, and he is the symbol of Hick's self-hatred, of Hick's past trying to tell him how to live. And as Hick's leaving, he's having all these thoughts in his head thinking, I shouldn't leave. I should go back and I should grab Cherry. I should take her from Karen. I should in fact kill Karen because she's going to go and try and rule Seattle. That's what he's thinking in his head. And his past is trying to tell him, dude, why are you trying to do this? Like, you don't deserve Cherry. Let's think about what you've done for a second. What have you done to deserve her? You've just killed people over and over and over again. What do you think exactly do you think you're doing? And then right at this moment, Hick's like, at this exact moment, a guy from the group comes up, and he's like holding the corpse of one of the rich guys that we saw in episode 7, when they were in the bank robbery and they hijacked that big old lounge. Well, one of those rich guys, they took him off, they snatched him up, and they're harvesting his organs so other soldiers in there feel like and get like surgical replacements so they could live on. And at this and then this guy's trying to ask Hick for some help in hacksawing off some limbs. And this exactly moment is what breaks Hick, and he's like, yeah. He tells this image, he tells the guy in the black surgical mask, yeah, you're right. I don't deserve Cherry. But here's the thing, though. And he takes out his M1911. He's like, he takes the knife that this guy who was trying to, with the corpse in his hand, was harvesting organs, and he stabs it right in his throat. And he's like, well, he stabs it in his throat, and then he starts saying, yeah, you're right. I don't deserve Cherry. And all these other people around him are surrounding him. They have guns trained down him. Like, they're like going, what the heck are you doing? What the heck were you doing? And Hick, like, he smokes a cigarette. He's like, really being badass here. He's like, you know what? You're right. It's just that I don't care. And then we hear Childish Gambino's Red Bone hit. Everything around us goes silent. All they hear is the music. As Hick just calmly goes through and destroys everyone in the compound, burning everything down using Molotovs, right? And this is this big scene because Hick essentially here, it's really up to interpretation on what's good or not. Because Karen by no means is a good person. She's terrible, okay? She verbatim was willing to just let Cherry just go back out in the wasteland and be the property of the very man she hated, because she cared more about her own organization and her own movement than she did her. And she was willing to sacrifice all these other people, harvest the organs of these other people so her soldiers could live on. And her whole dream is simply about just killing all these rich people in this inner circle, and then so she can live with the poor. She's not a good person. But Hick at the same time, though, has just killed people over and over again. Hick has caused Cherry to get harmed. And this big problem I was facing when I was first writing the season, I was trying to make Hick believe that, oh yeah, he doesn't bring Cherry into harmful situations, that's his life. But I start thinking in my head, no, he does. Cherry lost her fingers because of Hick. Hick, once again, instigated so many fights that would not have resulted, right? Now, granted, everything that happens in the series is not Hick's entire resulting. Like, the bounty hunters coming after them, that was Hick's trying to save Cherry in the first place. But Hick's nature is just this man who's constantly being haunted by all these other people. He just kills people. That's the only thing he's good at. And he's always bringing this harm on Cherry. Granted, Delilah is not that great of a person either. But Delilah has, like, a plan for life. She has a reliable business. Hick does not have that at all. He relies on killing people, taking their stuff, using that to survive. Going into abandoned buildings. He's always been a killer. And so in this scene, essentially, what Hick is doing is he's saying, "Oh yeah, I know I put Cherry in a harmful situation, and I'm going to be putting her in a more harmful situation now, since I'm literally about to kill her own mother. But I don't care because I have been depriving myself for the past 10 years of emotional connection, and now I have that, and I'm not going to throw that away." It's kind of like I would consider it sort of, not really, not quite as close to, but sort of close to Joel from The Last of Us, because at the end of The Last of Us, spoiler, Joel is presented with the option of either sacrificing his little girl, his essentially his new daughter, Ellie, for a vaccine that would save the whole world. Maybe it would, I don't know. Or just killing everyone in this hospital and letting her live because he simply doesn't want to lose another daughter again. And that's what Hank does here. He's like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna literally kill this girl's mother because I need her in my life. I'm not letting her go. I don't care if I put her in more danger. If I do this, I don't care. I just need her in my life. Then that's what Hick chooses. And so he powers through and he kills all these people as we expect Hick would. He just does it all, except the big final fight occurs when he breaches like the chapel where Karen is. And he kills her two guards, and Karen starts yelling at Hick about how dare he do this. How he somehow has the moral authority over her. And then Hick puts her at gunpoint, and she's like, oh shit, my life's about to end. And this is the big line delivery of the final season that Karen gives to Hick, and she's like, you know what? It's really kind of funny. The very thing I was thinking when I saw you and my daughter holding each other in that rubble was the very same thing I thought when I first saw you. And then she looks up at Hick, and she's like, why did she choose you? And then Hick puts a bullet in her. But this is this big revelation that slowly we're getting more and more information on what Hick did in his past. So we kind of get this final big revelation here where the big thing that he did to Karen that made her so angry had something to do with someone Karen knew, a woman, that chose Hick to be with her. So I'm not going to spoil anything yet because we're going to get to that in season 4. But overall, what we have gathered is that Hick was at one point a part of the NCR. He used to be doing a job that he now realizes only caused him harm, and that if you don't get out of this job, it's going to be bad. He tries to tell Colt, tries to tell Colt that, bounty hunting and doing all this killing thing is only there to really make yourself feel more powerful than others. And now we realize from Jane, shoot, I just spoiled her fucking name. Karen reveals to us that there was a woman in Hick's life who chose him, and Karen, don't know why she did that. I'm just gonna spoil it. Yes, Hick had a woman in his life named Jane, who was the sister to Karen. That's all I'm gonna say for now. For season 4, we will reveal the big event of what his life was, what happened in the NCR, what his job was doing, and stuff like that, and what ultimately happened to Jane. But yeah, so then Hickey kills Karen, and of course, he gets the Inner Circle gets alerted to their location. The Inner Circle hates him now, so they start hunting after him. Hick goes and grabs Cherry, who is currently hanging out with Colt and Wilford, and he's like, okay. And Hick says, hey, I'll try and get in contact with Delilah or you or something, but we're just gonna try and get out of the city for now. And Colt's like, dude, I know what you did, bro. I saw the thing getting burned down. And he's like, yeah, I did do that. I don't even care. And that is the end of season 2 of Fallout. We're gonna pick up tomorrow maybe my next log on season 3 of Fallout, the TV series. Hopefully, whoever is making that right now on Amazon, they're gonna watch this whole series and they're gonna go, bruh, like maybe that's what happened. Maybe they watched my first season and they're like, bruh, this makes for a perfect show. I'll go do that right now. I'll take this kid's script and I'll write it. No, that's not what's happening. But God, it would truly be a dream of mine to write for the Fallout show. And just because they're making it for now, right now on Amazon, that's actually kind of helpful, because now it gives me like a chance later on in my life that the world will be open to making a Fallout TV series, and hopefully it'll be good. As long as this TV series doesn't go anywhere near Seattle, we should be all right. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed watching me ramble to the screen. And the story I am attempting to tell without having to put any work into like writing a graphic novel or a script or movie or anything like that. So yeah, thank you. See ya. Danny's log finished.